and I'm going to start recording. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And so welcome to today's training, Exploring the SEAL Catalog. This is the third and last installment of our SEAL webinar series. So at the SEAL 101 training back in April, I spent about 10 to 15 minutes talking specifically about the catalog. We talked a little bit about basic searches and using the advanced search tool. But there's honestly so much more that we could talk about with the catalog. So today's webinar is really a chance for us to kind of take a deeper look and explore the catalog in a little bit more detail. So I'd like to start by thanking everyone for taking time out of your day to attend. It's really great to be able to see you all here, virtually anyways. And if you haven't met me before, my name is Kelsey Milner, and I am the Resource Sharing and Cataloging Librarian here at Southeastern. As you probably saw, we are recording this webinar and we'll make it available to everyone who registered along with this PowerPoint. So I baked in some time into the webinar to address questions as we go along. It's a little challenging to see the chat in Zoom while I'm doing a screen share, so I'm just going to be stopping periodically to kind of check for questions, probably between every 5 to 10 minutes. So feel free to put a question in the chat when it comes up, and when I stop, I'll address it. And I'll also try to read out all the questions that come in case anyone watches the recording for this webinar later. These breaks will also allow us to have a little bit of a breather between sections. So next slide. So what are we going to cover today? I always like to provide kind of a roadmap for my training, just so you know how the hour is going to be structured. So I'm going to kick off today by touching on the tools specifically behind the SEAL catalog. And because this section is a little bit more technical, we're going to hang out in the PowerPoint for it. And then after talking about how the catalog works, we're going to hop into the SEAL website, and I'm going to touch on, troubleshooting or explaining some kind of quirky things that you might see in the catalog from time to time. After that, I'm going to do some search techniques using Boolean operators, and I'm also going to do what I deem as fun catalog searches, and I put fun in quotes here. So this includes using some terms in searching to narrow down by language to find, foreign language materials and kind of other cool things that you can do with the catalog. So overall, SEAL, the catalog has two distinct functions. It's both our interlibrary loan catalog, but it's also a general union catalog for our entire region. And that means the catalog has access to holdings data for libraries beyond just those who elect to participate in ILL. And so the very last thing I'm going to touch on today is the role of this virtual union catalog and a few ways that it can be used. So overall, the general hope for today is that everyone will leave with kind of a better understanding of how the SEAL catalog works and ways that it can be used. So as we talk a little bit about the behind the scenes of SEAL, I wanted everyone to have the catalog fresh in their mind. So I made this little video, which kind of encapsulates what I wanted to focus on for this first section. The tools that make this particular SEAL search possible. So how do we go from entering a keyword, in this case for a rather thematic title, icy spring, to having our results then, sorted, compiled in a list, and then available to request from interlibrary loan. So that's what this section is going to cover. So I wanted to start by sharing a very, very brief history of SEAL. SEAL has been in its current form since 2016. Some of you might remember the old software that was used, which was called VDX. Finding something new when the time came was a tough task because the SEAL catalog had to be able to search multiple library catalogs from several different vendors. We have all the vendors and structure the incoming information in a way that could be, both user-friendly, but also usable for regional ILL. And even to this day, as things kind of change with catalogs and discovery layers, this is still kind of a challenging thing to do. So the product that was eventually decided on is called Master Key Connect. And this is a product from the company Index Data. And Master Key Connect is what's called a meta search system, and it allows for the searching of multiple resources at once from one single interface. And I've included a graphic from the Index Data website, which I think kind of visualizes this nicely. Basically, SEAL functions as a search portal straight to other library catalogs. So Seal doesn't actually contain any records of its own. It's not like kind of a traditional system catalog where it has static records, but it's actually searching catalogs in the moment and compiling that information live. So there's a few different methods that search tools like Seal can use to retrieve data from multiple library and system catalogs at once. The way that Seal does it specifically is through a protocol called Z39.50. It's a little old school, but it gets the job done. So I'd like to share a little bit more. Oh, whoops, I went too far. Share a little bit more about how Z39.50 works and what it is. So it's a client-server communications protocol, and it's basically used to kind of facilitate searching and retrieving information from remote databases. And it grew out of an effort in the 1980s to standardize searching between some of the major catalogs that existed at that time, like OCLC and the Library of Congress. The challenge then was that there was not a lot of consistency between different systems in how they responded to searches and requests for records. So these are, it's hard to say, Z39.50 fixes that issue by providing a kind of a standardized language so that a search from a single place can be interpreted the same way by multiple libraries at once. I read one overview of Z39.50 that described it as an Esperanto language, which I thought was kind of a neat way of describing it. Esperanto was initially developed to be a universal second language, and to accomplish that, it took words and language structure from languages all over the world. So essentially, when a search is placed in Seal, the request is sent to each of the individual library servers, or targets as they're called, and then they respond with results based on their interpretation of the search. So these Z39.50 is kind of a backdoor into library catalogs. In addition to being used in interlibrary loan, it's also used quite frequently for copy cataloging. And this is because it allows libraries to locate and retrieve high quality MARC records at no cost. Now I'd like to drill down a bit and just discuss how Z39.50 works when it comes to searching. So the structure of Z39.50 actually allows for pretty robust searches. So users can search using a variety of Boolean operators. Title, author, and ISBN searches are often the most effective searches. However, and this is something that I'm going to go into in more detail when we're doing some search techniques in the Seal catalog. In some instances, you can search keywords from other fields in a record. So you can search on things like summaries, subjects, note fields, publisher, and even call numbers. And there can be some variations between individual library catalogs in how they configure their Z39.50 and access to specific fields. And so this is why sometimes you might see differences in the data that is brought into Seal from different library catalogs. So for example, one library catalog might allow for searches on subject headings, while another might not. Oh, I keep skipping ahead. So now that we've touched on the mechanism behind the Seal search, I'd like to focus on what happens once a search is complete and the information is received in Seal. So the master key tool interprets and formats the results in a functional way. The catalog looks at search results and tries to compile them instantaneously when they're the same item, and this is done by matching different parts of the records, matching on things like title, author, publication date, to kind of confirm that it is actually the same material. So search results are then sorted, and typically searches are sorted by relevance, but you can actually change your search results to sort on other things like date or title. And one thing you might have noticed using the Seal catalog is that results can actually come in over a different period of time. And so the differences in time are just due to how long it takes the servers for individual libraries or systems to respond to a request for records. The product was specifically designed so that you could start viewing and clicking on your search results right away, and then the results will kind of continue to populate even as you use it. Master Key Connect also pulls out the relevant data for facets so you can better narrow down your searches further. So now we have kind of a little more sense of what's happening when we do our IC Spring search. A search of each library's catalog is performed at once via Z39.50, and then results are interpreted, compiled, and formatted by the master key tool. So now that we've touched briefly on how the catalog works, I'd like to touch on troubleshooting or explaining some kind of things you might see in the SEAL catalog from time to time. So I'm gonna stop sharing my PowerPoint and switch into sharing SEAL. So, but does anyone have any questions so far? Oh, sorry. I have to exit out of. You think this would be a smoother process after all this time, but okay. So you guys should be seeing the SEAL catalog if all went well. Okay, so some of the troubleshooting things that I'm going to talk about are a little hard to kind of replicate in the moment, but I'm going to try to show you what I can. And if you have questions or examples of your own, feel free to put these in the chat as well. So one of the noticeable things about the SEAL search is that records don't always compile into the same record, even if they do appear to be the same thing. And it's kind of hard to try and make this happen on the fly, but I'm just going to attempt by searching the book Educated by Tara Westover. Let's wait for our results to load. So based on what we see here, these two look like they would be the same book, but for whatever reason, it is being put onto two separate search results. So this just means that for whatever reason, the catalog in the moment as it was compiling these didn't recognize these as the same item. And this could be due to really subtle differences in the MARC records, like quirks of a particular cataloger or some other inconsistencies, which just made the catalog in the moment decide that these two items were actually unique. And so because the catalog is doing these searches live, you might actually also see search results in SEAL look different for the same item in different search sessions. But the search results will always pull out different formats and have them on different records. So you can see, here's the sound recording of the same book. So this is helpful for interlibrary loan because you always know what type of item you're requesting. One other thing I wanted to show you was you might have noticed that SEAL brings in the local availability of an item. And again, this is something that is brought in live and in the moment, so this should be totally up to date. But you might have noticed that it looks different depending on the library. So some libraries, it brings in just whatever the text is for the current availability of the item. And then some catalogs, it'll just bring in a dash for meaning available. So this is kind of based on the individual catalog and kind of how it's configured to display availability. So you might see it look different from library system to library system. So I've kind of jokingly labeled this next section, oops, I confused the catalog. I don't know if anyone else has ever encountered this, but sometimes if you do a lot of searches in SEAL consecutively, or you do a really complicated search that has a lot of Boolean operators, or you search for something that brings in too many results, because the SEAL catalog is searching so many different targets. It's millions of records. I don't know the exact number, but it's got to be a lot. So sometimes the catalog will kind of freeze up. And basically what will happen, it'll kind of stop working and the little spinning wheel when you search will just kind of keep going. And so to deal with this, I usually try a couple of things. The first thing I always do is just try right-clicking and then reloading the page. And that usually does the trick, but if you are still having issues, you could also just open up a new tab and kind of open up the catalog fresh. The last thing I wanted to touch on is a little bit more interlibrary loan focus, but this is a question that I get a lot, so I did want to touch on it today. So I wanted to share some reasons why you might do a SEAL search and end up on the ILO request screen that says there are no available libraries to request from. And I know this can be confusing, especially if it seemed that maybe there was a library who could send it. So I'm just going to do a quick search to kind of show you what that message looks like. So I'm going to search for resource sharing in libraries. I'm not seeing the one that I was trying to show. this example. I'll just do it with this because I think this will work too. So if we do a request, we'll get this message, sorry, no available library to route your request to at this time. So that'll happen. And you'll get to the title screen that you go to first, and it does look like there is a local library that has it. So I want to explain why you might see this message. So Seal pulls in everything indiscriminately. However, we, or more specifically, Zach, our systems manager who set all of this up, filters out items that aren't requestable for several different reasons. One of the reasons is that the library isn't an active ILL participant. And because the catalog functions as both a regional union catalog and the ILO catalog, some libraries that are searched aren't actively sharing their materials. So you might have noticed that the Seal search has these categories, and these kind of help you choose whether you want to use the catalog primarily for ILO or if you want results of all libraries, regardless of their lending status. So you could potentially receive this message if your catalog search was set to all, so it brought in results from non-lending libraries. The default is to have it at all lenders, though. This can also happen if a library is currently not lending materials. As I talked about in Seal 101, there's a way that you can turn off lending in your Seal account, and we do encourage libraries to change their status whenever they can't lend materials for any length of time. So once a library turns off lending, their library will no longer appear in this drop-down menu. So they'll still be listed as a library that has the item, but you won't be able to place a request for it. This message can also be caused by item type, which is the issue with the example that I showed. In your account, lenders can also decide what types of items you're able to loan. And if a library indicates they can't loan a particular item type, like reference books, the library also won't appear in the drop-down screen. So ebooks in particular are something you'll probably never be able to get through Seal. There's just a lot of challenges with the vendor restrictions and kind of a lack of technology to support the sharing of ebook files. So those are just kind of some of the reasons that you might encounter that message, even if you go to the title screen and it does list libraries that look like they might have it. So I just wanted to pause here and just check for questions. Okay, so I'm just going to switch this. So the next thing I'd like to do is discuss searching in Seal. So I want to share a few search strategies and some tips with you. And I've kind of thought a lot on the best way to structure this particular section, but I've kind of decided ultimately to split it into two different parts. So for the first part, I'm going to discuss creating complex searches in the Seal search bar. So you can really make some specific ones using Boolean operators and by using terms that let the catalog know to look at just specific parts of an item's record, like the title or the author. And you can always use this advanced search to kind of structure complicated queries for you. But as part of our deep dive into the catalog, I wanted to show you how you could structure them kind of on your own without coming to advanced search if you ever need to. So this could be useful to narrow down searches quickly, or if you ever have an item that is challenging to locate. So after we talk about Boolean operators, I'm going to move on to what I think of as some fun search techniques. I've been experimenting with the catalog and just wanted to share some of what I've discovered with you. So incorporating some non-traditional search terms into simple searches and kind of showing how the catalog could also be used to actually browse on topics. So just to start, I wanted to begin with a simple keyword search and kind of add some layers of complexity with Boolean operators and those field limiters to create a super specific search. As everyone probably knows, a lot of the time we can use Seal with just a simple keyword or ISBN search, and that's particularly true for items that have very unique titles. But I'm going to work through an example that doesn't work with a simple search and then show some of the techniques that can help drill this down. So I'm going to search for the book Spring by Allie Smith using a title keyword. So I'm just going to go ahead and do the search. And as you can probably see right away as the catalog starts to populate, this is not the most effective search term. We're getting a lot of kind of unrelated spring searches back. It's just a really popular term. And it's not only just pulling from the titles of items. It's also matching on things like item summaries, subject headings, note fields, and things like that. So we're bringing in kind of a huge variety of materials. So I have like a little trick, my little hack for kind of really quickly narrowing down search results. And this is just something you could do if you're ever in a rush or you just kind of want to quickly get to what you're looking for. So one thing that you can do is add a second keyword that is unique to that title. So the most common and probably effective search would be to add in the author's last name. So I'm going to try to do Spring Smith. And so when you put in multiple words into the catalog, it does assume that there's an and between them. And so it's only going to return records that have both Spring and Smith somewhere in them. So this one was a little more effective. We've narrowed down our searches and we actually, this is the book we're looking for. It's a little further up in our results. But there are some things that we could do to kind of make a more targeted search. So the SEAL catalog does allow for adding, kind of indicating what part of a bibliographic record you would want to search. And these are called field limiters. And this will change the search from looking at all parts of a record into a more specific area. So SEAL has the capabilities for a variety of these, including we have TI equals for title, AU equals for author, SU equals for subject, and then date equals for publication dates. So the TI search, of course, will search on an item's title, and it'll just look at the title field of a record. But one thing I wanted to note with this is if you ever use it, you can generally omit the or a, like you can usually omit those words if they start a title, and that's because usually when catalogers catalog records that start with the, they omit those words. So you could do a catalog, you could do a title omitting those terms. So I'm just going to show an example of how much adding a TI can actually limit our search results. So not to be super stereotypical, all of my favorite test searches are for cat-related books. So I'm going to do a basic keyword search for tabby cats. And so again, because I haven't indicated a part of the catalog to look at, it's looking at multiple parts of record. So it's kind of loading. We're getting a variety of books, mythology of cats, cats type romance. I'm not sure what that is, but we're getting kind of a variety of materials. But if we were to change this to TI equals, our results have gone way down to just 14 items. And so what this essentially means is that this might be a popular term to show up in general books about cats or in summaries or things like that, but it's not actually a popular title phrase. So these field limiter searches can be a really quick way to kind of narrow down what you're looking for. So we could kind of go back to our original search that we were doing for spring and add a TI equals to see if this will kind of limit our results. And so this example, we have limited from, our initial keyword search, but there is probably more that could be done to kind of narrow this down. So you can actually combine the field limiters together to make even more specific searches. For example, you could do a title and author search, and this will tell the catalog only to look at the title and author fields in bibliographic databases. And one thing that's a little different with these types of searches as compared to that initial kind of hack that I showed you with just the two keywords. If you want to combine field limiters, you do have to type the and between them out. Otherwise, it'll confuse the catalog, which I say speaking from experience. So if we wanted to add and do a title and author search, we could add our author's last name. So put an and then our second field limiter. So for the author's name, you can structure this a little bit different. I've searched on just the last name before with some effectiveness. I've also searched on how you would typically see it in the catalog record, which is last name, comma, first name. So you can kind of use a judgment call. If it's a really common last name, like our example, Smith, I would suggest doing last and first name just for that extra layer of specificity. So in our example, Smith is so broad, I am going to add her first name. So let's do Smith Alley. And that one was really successful. We finally got down just to the results that we needed. So yeah, so you can kind of add these into your searches to really quickly narrow down what you're looking for. So I wanted to switch gears a little bit and share some of the other Boolean operators that you can use in the seal catalog. The first of these is OR. It's similar to AND, but instead of telling the catalog both items need to be present in search results, it's saying either of the terms could be present. And this can be a way to kind of broaden your search a bit. And this can be especially helpful if you're ever using Seal to try to browse on specific topics. So if you have topics that have synonyms, you could add the OR to make sure those items aren't overlooked in your search. And kind of one example of what this could be is we kind of use the words interlibrary loan and resource sharing a little bit interchangeably when we're talking about ILL, but this could be an example of where an OR would be helpful to include resources that have both of those titles in them. You can also use OR to kind of search for opposing terms. So this is low-hanging fruit, but I just wanted to demonstrate how these OR searches looks. So I'm going to search for cats or dogs. So I'm just going to wait a second for it to kind of start populating. So you can kind of see that it does a good job of bringing in, both dog results and cat results. So it's bringing in things that have either of those terms. Another function that I use quite a lot is quotes. So if you add a set of quotes around your search term, they'll kind of tell the catalog to search those words as one single phrase. This is really helpful when you want to search on a particular string of words because it can really help to filter out irrelevant results. So you can do this for a simple keyword. So I'm actually going to switch this to all to kind of get some more results. So if we did a search for the book, How Does It Work? Just those words, we get a lot of different results back. So we do get kind of some on that keyword, but we also get how does electricity work? How does investing work? And things like that, because it's pulling on each of these words individually. But if we wanted to just search for the specific title, we could search this as one single phrase. So you can see that we've narrowed this down really quickly. Now we're just getting results that have this phrase, how does it work, somewhere in the record. And as we've just kind of demonstrated, you could go and be even more specific with this by adding in, a field limiter to kind of narrow it down. So the last operator that I want to talk about is parentheses. These are useful if you want to incorporate multiple Boolean operators within a single search. And the parentheses just kind of tell the catalog how to search that query in a way, in the way that you want. So incorporating the parentheses always makes me think of algebra. So I don't know if anyone else ever had to learn the FOIL method where you go first, outside, inside, last. So one example of when the parentheses could be helpful is if you ever wanted to do like a title search or a keyword search, but you also want to search on multiple authors using, either and to get results for both or. So I'm just going to do one last example in this section. Let's say you wanted a copy of Return of the King from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but you were okay with either the Peter Jackson movie or the book by J.R. Tolkien. So you would structure it this way. Hopefully I can type this right. And AU. So the parentheses let the catalog know that you only want this or search to be related to the authors. Otherwise, it would kind of, without the parentheses, it would read the search string from left to right. And so if we do it this way, then we should get targeted results from both the books and the movies. So you can see we're getting kind of a mixture of films and the books. If we switch these to an and, so only records that have both of these authors, we would actually narrow down to just the films because they're the only ones that have both of those names present. And so I wanted to show you, we have this little help a button in Seal. So this gives a little bit of information of kind of what I just talked about, how to structure these searches. So if you ever need kind of like a reminder, this will tell you what the field limiters are, AU equals, TI, SU, and it also has some examples of how to structure this. So this is kind of a good reference for kind of going back to these Boolean operators. So I just wanted to pause for a second and check for any questions. Oh yeah, so Alexi had a question, where could we find a complete list of the field limiters? So yeah, just showed you where you can find those. Past few books we looked on for Seal had fees associated with borrowing material. So as part of our regional interlibrary loan code, you shouldn't have any borrowing fees for actually placing a request. The only time that there should ever be fees are when a book is potentially overdue, or if it's lost or missing or things like that, but there should never be a borrowing fee. So if you want to email me, maybe like privately, and kind of we can talk about that and see what's going on. But yeah, this is something we kind of talked about in the webinar we did last month. That's part of our regional code that everyone agrees on, that we don't have any fees specifically for filling an ILO request, but there can be fees associated with, late items, missing items, damaged items, things like that. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I'm going to go into kind of some less traditional searches for the Seal catalog. I've been doing a lot of experimenting with searches in Seal, and so I have been able to have some success combining with keywords like format, foreign language codes, call numbers, and then other terms that appear within records. And so the reason I've categorized these as more, fun than functional is because the effectiveness can kind of vary from library. And this is just based on individual differences in how they map bibliographic fields for Z39.50. However, I found at least some results with each of the examples that I'm going to touch on today. So this can be kind of, a useful hack if you want to kind of quickly look at items, or just want to explore the Seal catalog in a different way, maybe use it for browsing materials. So someone once asked me if you could find foreign language materials in Seal. So I did a little digging and discovered that there are a few things that you can try to locate them. And so one thing that you can do is combine item titles with the foreign language codes that they're assigned in the MARC record. And you can actually find a list of these by Googling MARC language codes. So I've just pulled up what this list of codes looks like. So every language has their own specific code. So just to demonstrate how this works as an example, I'm going to search very hungry caterpillar SPA. SPA is the 3-letter code that is typically assigned to items that are written in Spanish. And I did just use the quotes just to search that as a phrase. So you can see that this is a way to kind of really quickly find Spanish versions of this particular book. And you can actually try this with other language too. So I'm going to try it with GER, which is the 3-letter MARC code for German. And you can also do it with French, FRE. So I will say that the results searching this way can vary a little bit, just because it all depends on the information that the cataloger chose to include when they catalog the item. I've found that it works particularly well for children's books that are more likely to be purchased in multiple language. It doesn't work very well for DVDs, because these materials often have subtitles in other languages, and usually those codes are reflected in the MARC record in some form. So in addition to having these codes in them, language is also sometimes indicated by subject headings in MARC records. So you can search Seal using subject headings by way of those field limiters that we just talked about. So to search on a subject heading, you would do, copy the whole thing, SU equals, and then the heading. So I'm going to search on French language materials, which is a heading that's often given to French materials. And you can there is a way that you can look up Library of Congress subject headings. This is that website. So you can kind of search and find a particular heading to search for in SEAL. So I'm just going to go ahead and try this. And you can see we get kind of a variety of French language books that all have this subject heading. As I mentioned earlier, I've also been trying out searches on call numbers. I don't know that if this is something that people do a lot, but you can do it in SEAL. And this can be a really easy way to do kind of like a general subject search or a way to browse holdings. And you can often figure out a common call number for an item by looking at the MARC record, and you can find MARC records right in SEAL, and you can kind of find the numbers that they're assigned and do a search on this to find other materials that fall in this kind of same subject area. So I've found a common call number for juvenile language materials that are cataloged in Spanish. So if I did a search for that, oh, I searched on the wrong thing. Okay. Okay, so this was this is the common Library of Congress call number for juvenile Spanish language material. So you can see we get a lot of kids' books that are written in Spanish. Another fun thing I wanted to show you was incorporating format within your searches to kind of quickly narrow down those results. So let's say I needed a Blu-ray edition of Jurassic Park. I could do a search string like Jurassic Park, Blu-ray. And of course, as we just kind of talked about, you could search this with, some more specificity, by including a title field and doing things like that. But as you can see, my results pretty quickly just bring up the Blu-ray. And then I could even change this. If I say I wanted the soundtrack, I could just do CD instead. And then I get some great music from Jurassic Park. So those are just like a few kind of things that I've learned from just sort of experimenting with the catalog. So it kind of can be searched in a lot of different ways, even ways that you might not think would be possible. So I could probably keep on talking about this forever, but I just wanted to stop and see if there are any questions. I lost my, oh, there it is. I couldn't find the chat bar. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to move on to our last section of the webinar, which is how SEAL can be used as a regional union catalog. So Southeastern has a really long history of making the holdings of our regional libraries accessible to our members. This is actually a service we've been providing for over 50 years in various incarnations. And I actually have a few photos just to kind of demonstrate how this has changed over time. So hopefully you're seeing the photograph. So this started with printed books of regional serials, and we moved on to microfiche, and then CDs. So this was called Cat Disc. And now, of course, we have our SEAL catalog, which holds that same purpose. Sorry, it's a hard word to say, apparently. This is a little different than the functionality it plays as just a catalog for ILL. I touched on these categories earlier, which allow users to kind of choose whether they look at all libraries in SEAL or only ILL lenders. So when using the catalog as a union catalog tool, you'd want to set this to all, and when you do, it'll bring in results from all the libraries in the area, regardless of their participation in ILL. And I kind of like to think of SEAL used in this way as kind of a baby WorldCat. So WorldCat is the global database managed by OCLC where libraries from across the world can upload their holdings. And when you do a search in WorldCat, it'll show you which library a particular item is located at, and it'll also sort results geographically, so you can kind of see libraries that are close by right away. So the WorldCat's a really great tool. It just doesn't have the kind of granular results that we see in SEAL when it comes to our regional library, so just in the Southeastern area. And this is particularly true for consortia like public library systems and school library systems, and things like that. So I wanted to do just a comparison search in SEAL and WorldCat just to kind of demonstrate how SEAL can paint a fuller picture of our regional holdings. And I promise this isn't me like making fun of WorldCat because I actually use it all the time for cataloging and for interlibrary loan. So I'm going to go ahead and do a sample search in WorldCat. I'm just going to make this a little bigger. So I'm searching on for the book Fates and Furies. So if I do a search for this book, if I do, okay, so you can kind of see it's going by region. I'm in Highland right now, so we have Vassar, we have Bard, we have the Military Academy, and it kind of lists some of our regional libraries. But if we were to search this same book in SEAL, you can see we have such a huge variety of libraries represented. So we have, all of our regional colleges. Mid-Hudson Library System has many copies of this book. And then we have, our CLS on this record also has many copies. So you really get a sense for how widespread regional ownership of this particular item is. And this is the only place that you can get that kind of information other than going to each catalog kind of individually and doing a search. So this knowledge can be helpful for a variety of purposes, probably some purposes that I haven't even thought of, but one of the main things that it can do, what can be useful for, is directing patrons to a specific location where an item is, if it isn't accessible via interlibrary loan, like if it's a library that's not participating in SEAL, or if you have a patron who needs immediate access to a particular item. And this can also be useful in conjunction with a LibGuide that we have at Southeastern, which is called our Guest and Community Borrowing LibGuide. So this LibGuide contains the borrowing policies for guests and community members at several college libraries in our region. And it's sorted out by county, and each county has a list of their libraries and the policies of those libraries. So I'm going to do Dutchess as an example. So you can see it has information on each college, what options they have for guest borrowers, what their on-site access is like, and there's a link to the borrowing policy so you can actually see it on their website and see what it says. So this can be a good resource for finding out what the access policies for our regional colleges are. So essentially you could kind of use SEAL as a way to find out where a needed item is located and use this LibGuide to kind of let your patron know what kind of on-site services are available. So this knowledge can also be helpful for some other library processes. So for example, library acquisitions. So when you're deciding whether to purchase an item, it can be helpful to look and see how many libraries already have it in the region. So if it is something that's maybe owned by a lot of other libraries and you could get it easily through SEAL or other ILO services, it might not be a necessary purchase. And this can also be helpful if you're ever thinking about weeding collection. So I was recently talking to a friend who is doing some weeding of her collection, and she was kind of nervous about removing books, kind of wondering, what if someone ends up needing this item down the line and I've gotten rid of it? So with SEAL, you could do a search for a title and see if the item is available at other regional libraries. And this could kind of help to inform your decision about whether or not a book should be kept. And like I said, there probably are a lot of, other ways that this can be useful too that I haven't even thought of. But so I just wanted to pause and see if there were kind of any questions about, thinking about SEAL in this way as a union catalog. So that's it for our Exploring the SEAL Catalog webinar. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend. And if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to send me an email at kelsey@cinelark.org. And I'm going to be sending out, the recording and the PowerPoint shortly, probably, within the next few days. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for me. So thank you again. And I hope everyone has, a good rest of your day. Thank you. Oh, yep, I can add that link. You can find that link right here. So that should take you to the Seal Catalog help page. And it's also, when you go to the catalog homepage, it's also in the upper right-hand corner next to the advanced search. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave the meeting.